few minutes late, but it seems to be tradition. We have no public comment this evening. And we have a quorum of committee members. Karen Stufin and I. Chris Kaczynski is not here, but we are joined by Beth Hostler and Kara Kaforian. So can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, as I mentioned, there are no remote or in-person public comments this evening. Next on our agenda, are there any changes to the October 8th Finance and Operations Committee minutes?
I didn't have any, Jim.
Okay, then hearing none, those minutes stand as submitted. And here's where I will turn it over to Mr. Welton to talk about bus transportation, both special education with Cottage Hill as the provider, and also for the general student population with First Student as the provider.
Thank you, Jim. I think I'm going to jump around. I want to make sure we hit the facilities update first, item F. And
okay.
With that in mind, I'm going to start the facility update before Todd takes over and go to Elizabeth Hennessy to talk about the financing of the referendum. It came up at the last board meeting that there was some interest in taking advantage of the very low interest rate environment that we are experiencing right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Hennessy.
Come into your facilities meeting here with the update.
Elizabeth, we can't hear you.
Okay, I don't know why that is. Huh.
Elizabeth, I think you're muted.
Okay, now can you hear me? Yes, no? I'm unmuted, but I'm not sure why you can't hear me.
Do you have a cell phone number? Can I just type her in?
Sure.
Elizabeth, we're going to give you a call to get your sound in. For some reason, we're not hearing you in here. We can see you. We can see the presentation. But can't hear you. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Yeah, I got it.
Can you hear me now?
I will turn.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, I apologize about that. I'm not sure why that's happening. So let me jump right into the presentation. The first slide gives you a historical perspective on interest rates. And Chris mentioned at the outset that interest rates are, very low right now, which they have been. And looking at this chart, which goes back to January of 2001, we see a couple of highlights of low interest rates. First, in July of 2016, right after Brexit, then when the Federal Reserve in December 16 increased Fed fund rates for the first time in over a year, they continued to gradually increase rates till 2017, implementing 3 rate hikes. Then in July of 19, the Fed reversed the course and cut the target Fed funds rate for the first time in 10 years. In August 2020, we hit an all-time low interest rate through the entire curve, and we're not too far off that now. Next slide you saw at the last board meeting, it just points out the interest rate market when the referendum was approved, and this is, by the way, the AAA Municipal Market Data Index, and the blue line is the U.S. 10-year Treasury. And you see where we sold bonds in July 2019. We increased issuance given the low interest rate environment, 60 million. We came back in November of 2020 and sold an additional 40 million. Again, taking very close to the all-time low interest rates. And here we are in April, as of April 13th. Rates came down last week, so they're even lower than shown here. So we're not too far off the levels we were at in November. And here's a slide with the actual rates. So we're in a very low interest rate environment historically. It's hard to know what's going to happen in the future. We do know that the economy is heating up and there's pressure on inflation, but most economists think inflation is under control. But with an increasing gross national product, we will see pressure on rates. So here's our original plan, 15 million here in 2021 of the 168.5 million referendum. The debt service is shown under the yellow highlighted box, and it's going at about 18 years. And then we come back in January of 2023 with the final 54.5 million. So that's the original plan that we reviewed last week and the refunding components with it. Then the board asked the question, a very good question, can we issue more principal now in 2021 with the current constraints of our debt schedule and our expenditure schedule? Because if you recall, we want to, of course, fit the debt into the level debt structure set forth with our promise to the taxpayers back in 2018. And then the IRS also has a requirement that whenever you issue bonds, you're able to spend at least 5% of the proceeds in the first 6 months, and the majority, or 95%, in 3 years after the issuance date. So we went back to Todd and Chris, and they came back with a expenditure schedule that worked with 5% and constrained within the first 6 months, and I'll share that with you later, although the numbers are super small, but it looks like we're very close to where we were, and we could probably spend almost 6% within the first 5 months, and certainly all of it in 3 years. And then we looked at our debt structure, and we determined that 45 million of the 2023 projected 54 million could be moved up and still keep the structural integrity of the debt plan. Hold on, I'm sorry, echo. I'm going to turn off. I'm going to mute on the screen. So anyway, we can keep the integrity of the structure. Oh gosh, that's worse. Are you guys hearing an echo? Chris?
I think we're good now, Elizabeth.
Okay, thanks. So what we would do is we would keep at least 24 million in the issue in 23, so we can get out to our final maturity year of 2042. Because if you recall, bonds can have a limit of 20 years for payoff. If we go to 45 million on this issue in 2021, we'll extend the maturity 2 more years, because right now the 15 million is paid off in 18 years. So this is the structure, if you can see, where we've got 45 million plus the refunding here in 2021. We go out 2 more years, and then we reduce the proposed January 23 issuance to 24.5 million. And you can see all the principals in those last 2 years. Again, we need those last 2 years to keep the integrity of the level debt service schedule over the period as promised to the taxpayers, basically the 22 years. So I highlighted the 337 million of total debt service in this versus the 340 million of the prior
prior option, issuing only 15 million now, to show you that this option, option 2, which is the option where we're issuing 45 million, in these scenarios I've just put together, is $3.4 million less by issuing the $45 million now instead of January of 2023. But that is because we have a 1.5% cushion in the 2023 issue. We always try to be conservative so that we're not surprised by higher interest rates that would keep us from achieving the structure promised to the taxpayers. So, that is why the option of doing 45 million now is so much cheaper by 3.4 million. However, issuing bonds sooner under the same interest scenario, current interest rates of today for both the 21 and the 23 issues, is costlier by issuing the $45 million sooner. Why? Because we have more debt, 30 million more of debt outstanding 18 months longer. So if we use current interest rates with no cushion, we've got a difference in interest cost of about 1.93 million in favor of doing just the 15 million now, as opposed to the 45 million now in 2021. Does that make sense? We're basically just keeping more bonds outstanding for a longer period of time. So the question is, how much do interest rates have to go up by January of 2023 on the current scenario, the 15 million versus the 54 million in 23, that's option 1, to make us better off, meaning lower total interest costs, issuing 45 million now instead of the 15 million? And that answer is 0.48%, or 48 basis points. So you might think, well, gosh, 18 months, could rates go up by 48 basis points? I just direct you back to this graph to show you that that certainly can happen. It's happened in much shorter periods of time, even from November of 18 to May of 19. 50 basis points is the distance between any of these two gray lines, if you can see that on the graph. So we certainly had rates come down by more than that, and then rates go up by that amount. They can go up quickly. Well, we saw the complete dislocation as the pandemic came to light, but certainly rates could go up by 48 basis points within 18 months very easily, depending on what happens in the economy. So, based on history. So from that perspective, I think it makes sense to issue more debt now. And 45 million is the maximum more debt we can issue to keep us within our debt structure, to take interest rate risk off the table to the maximum extent we can for the bonds issued in 2023. So with that, I will pause and see if you have any questions.
Yeah, Elizabeth, put it into perspective from the taxpayer, what would the difference be?
Oops, do I have it on?
Can you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't press hard enough. So put it in perspective from the taxpayer. What would it look like? What we promised and what this scenario would be? No, she did that.
So it looks like this page 2, our average interest rates, and I didn't do the comparison sheet like I did in the last presentation, but our overall total interest cost should be lower if interest rates go up. If they go down or stay the same, we're still going to be in good shape versus the promise. So I don't think there's any danger of exceeding what we promised taxpayers, even if rates go up in 23. And this option is more defensive against rates going up in 23 because we're issuing more debt and locking it in now.
So again, just help us to put it into perspective. when you talk, really the only con, in a way, is that the debt is outstanding 18 months longer. So again, from a taxpayer perspective, can you put it into terms what that means for them?
Right. The 30 million of the bonds is outstanding 18 months longer than our proposal of doing just 15 million. But all the bonds together are outstanding the same length of maturity as was promised to the taxpayers.
I don't have a mic, so I'm just going to speak very loudly so Elizabeth can hear me.
Thank you.
So my quick question is, and I apologize if it was addressed early, that's a bigger chunk of money earlier, and Todd is here to tell me that we can make that money like put into projects earlier than we had planned. Because it's great to issue the bonds, but if we're not using that money to make our projects happen, then I'm not sure what the benefit would be in the long term. So are there projects that we could utilize with the referendum money, move the timeline up?
Yes, absolutely. I can try to share with you the spreadsheet, which I have color-coded.
And I apologize if that was at the beginning.
No worries. Stop sharing this, and then I'm going to share this. Now, this is going to be small, but let me explain to you what this is. So, this is our cash flow. And on the far left side, you see the total monthly cost, and then you see the green boxes. That is the expenditure of the 60 million. That will be completely expended by August of 2022. Maybe I can make this even bigger. Well, that's not. Okay, so the green is the 60 million. And so this is how this bond has been spent. Then we did the 2020 bond, which is in the purple boxes for 40 million. And you see how I have the first 6 months highlighted to make sure that we're spending enough under the IRS requirements. And that will be totally expended by August of 2023. The blue is the 45 million. And this also, we can achieve that first 5% in 6 months. And then, as you can see, we're spending small amounts, then bigger chunks in here. And that will be all spent by February of 2024. And then that brings us to our very final issue in the pink, which is the 24.4 million. And that will be spent by the end of the schedule. So, oh, sorry, we have another page. Here you go. You can see the rest of the 24 million here, which is going to take us through December of 2025. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it definitely is helpful. Thank you, Elizabeth. So there are projects that the timeline can be moved up on, and we can actually make that happen.
Yes, actually, we have already done that. Based on when we had the construction schedule back in 2018 to where it is now, we've already moved a lot of the projects up where we eliminated that gap year for field, and we changed some of the sequencing of the projects where in the first 3 years, we've already moved up like $20-some million of projects from future phases up to these first few phases.
I feel like this is even putting more like pressure, right, like on the timeline, and I just want to make sure that it's doable. I mean, this all makes sense to me, but not if it's not doable from the actual implementation part.
How we have everything laid out right now over the next few years it is doable.
Thank you.
I think also to know there's a limited capacity on what we can get done at once, and that by selling the bonds early, we're actually doing a good thing for the taxpayers and saving money, even if we can't spend it all. I do know we talked today, but a lot of these timelines have been moved up, and that's a good thing, but I wouldn't expect to spend all that money, really fast. There will be some that will take time. And the other thing is that we also earn interest money on money that is in the bank during that time that we're waiting to spend it. So that's another way too, right, Chris?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, our interest rates are very
the
low,
rate's
but we
pretty
are
low,
earning
but,
interest.
But there is a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. At these low rates, we're projecting like maybe 2 million earnings over the whole 168 million. So you're probably doing better than that, but we've assumed very conservative earnings on these investments.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for Todd. Todd, did we accelerate any projects further to meet the schedule, or things fell within and our variable then was how much we could issue?
We did accelerate some projects, and what we kind of look at doing, instead of taking an elementary school and do it in 3 phases, we condense it into 2 phases. So we moved some of those projects up, like the project we're going to do this summer with Emerson is a phase 2, but it's going to take care of the rest of the building. And then the ones we have planned for Jackson, Jefferson, and Fisher next summer will be the second phase at those buildings. Instead of having 3 phases, we just brought some of that up, and we're doing everything at that building, so we'll be done with those buildings too. So we did bring a lot of different components or different types of projects forward on this current schedule that we have right now.
Okay, and then by consolidating those phases and not having to go back to that elementary school again, are there some economies to be gained there?
There could be, but ICI could probably say a little bit better on that if we're gonna gain some economies in there. The less times we have to mobilize at a site, you are gonna save money on that too.
Okay, all right, thank you. Karen, go ahead.
So the last piece that I have from construction standpoint is, in order to, if we take this to the full board for board discussion, and approve this direction, the question that I want to make sure that we clearly answer is, by accelerating the projects, we're not adding cost to the total project. More manpower, whatever it happens to be, it's going to be the same cost, whether it's shortened or longer. Okay.
Yes.
And any other questions regarding this? No?
There's a series of, in the, Elizabeth, this is Rob Martinelli, there's, in the option 2, the yellow box proposed April 21st, there's a series of negative numbers starting in 21, 22, and then in also 24. Is that cap money? Is that, what is that?
So that's part of the refunding structure that we went over in the board meeting on the 13th. So there's some bonds that are currently callable July 1 that we're refunding for restructuring purposes, because if you remember, if you go to the, if you've got the presentation, let me share it again if I haven't.
You don't have to do that, Elizabeth.
We've got bonds that are
due.
still outstanding from prior referendums, and this is the same in both options 1 and 2. So these bonds in the column that says current debt service, you can see they're 15, 16 million. So in order to fit in our new debt service and pay interest, we have to refund a portion of the 2012 bonds and the 2015 bonds. So we're actually refunding some of that debt service, which is why those look negative. And the good news is, because rates are so low on a present value basis, this is in fact saving about $500,000 present value after cost of issuance. But this has always been part of the plan. We timed this issue for April of 21 so that we would be able to hit that call date coming up on the 2012 bonds, July 1. Sure.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we're gonna have parameter resolutions for the April 27th board meeting?
Yes, and if the finance committee is in agreement that this makes sense, you know, it all really rests on, do you think rates are going to go up by more than 48 basis points in 23? And I think you know, this is a conservative strategy to lock these bonds in now. We will have that parameters resolution reflect the 45 million of new money and the escrow resolutions for the refunding as well for consideration by the board on April 27th.
Karen, you good with that? Okay. Yeah, let's move forward.
All right, sounds good, Elizabeth. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, Todd is gonna be up next with the facilities update.
Yep, all right. As we look at the facilities update, what we're gonna do is run through of kind of where we're at financially, look at the facilities master plan schedule over the next few years. We're gonna talk a little bit about Jackson, Jefferson, and Fisher and the renovations we have planned for those buildings for summer of '22, and then we'll run through some of the summer capital projects we have. This screen right here is, can you get the whole screen up there, RJ? Well, I just kind of summarize a lot of the projects that we have in the facilities master plan. I kind of grouped them into the 5 categories with the schools, renovations, MEPs. And down below, you can see what's kind of included in each one of those. So as you look at it, as of February 7th, expenditures that we have paid out in Fund 60 and 61, which are the bond funds, we have almost $30 million paid out. So we're about 17.5% completed right now. So that's everything in there that we have going on. And if you sit there and you look at it, if you project out of projects that are in process right now, the ones that the board has approved, with where we are with the bids on there and where the budgets were, and the projects we have not started, of what's identified as the budget in the facilities master plan, we are tracking right on 168.5. And that is including the additional work that we did out at Fisher for where the board approved additional funds for the office addition and renovation, which was not in the capital plan or the facilities master plan. So, I mean, there's a lot of things out there. Our 2 biggest projects are coming up. Lincoln will have a shovel in the ground here pretty soon, and then Field right after that. Those 2 buildings represent about 37% of the 168.5. But right now, we feel very comfortable where we're tracking at. Obviously, we'll see as we start bidding out more projects for next year.
The actual expenditure is not committed cost, meaning Lincoln School, you bid that work, that's not in the 22 million, or that is in the 20?
The only thing that's in there are consultant fees, A&E fees, and things like that.
So really, our committed cost to date is higher than the 17.5%.
Yes, these are just,
We've locked in contracts in theory with a lot of those contractors, partners now.
Yep.
So your committed cost is probably, what was the total Lincoln?
our committed costs are probably up to 60, 65 million right now.
65 million in true commitment versus the 168. Okay, thank you.
Next slide. So just give a summary for some of you. These are the projects that we've completed already over the last couple of years with the facilities master plan. These are just a list of some of those projects out there. Next slide. These are the ones of what you were just talking about. These are the ones that are in process right now with board-approved bids with the stadium track replacement, nanatorium, continuation of Edison, New Lincoln School, and that Emerson renovations. One thing with that Emerson renovations that we're doing this year, initially back in 18, we had that scheduled for the summer of 24. So that was one of the projects that we pulled forward up there. And so that's about a $3.5 million project. So I'm just gonna highlight some of those ones as we go through this that we pulled forward in these years. These are the projects that we have in design right now with the new school, Fisher, Jefferson, and Jackson. Like Jackson on that project, we are gonna do that in 3 different phases. Now we're just doing Jackson in 2, and the same thing with Jefferson. And the York Auditorium renovations that we're looking at designing now, that was initially scheduled for the summer of '23. So that $7 million project is another project we bumped up. So we bumped up quite a bit of projects to make sure that schedule that we sent Elizabeth for the bonds, we're right on track with that. And with the remaining of the projects out there, we're looking potentially all the way out to 2025. The only reason we do that is because the Madison renovations, we're not sure how we're gonna be staging that, if we stage it in 2 years or maybe we do it in 1 year, but I just put that out there. And then 2025 would just be any low-hanging miscellaneous items that we have to cover up. But the bulk of it, summer '22 is gonna be the biggest year out there. Obviously finishing up Lincoln, starting Field and the other additions, and then we start phasing everything down there. Next, I'm gonna have Leanne come up a little bit and talk about the designs of where we have for those summer projects with Jefferson, Jackson, and Fisher, and go through that a little bit. Yeah, you can go right there.
Great. Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. You can go to the next slide. So we're working on all 3 of these projects simultaneously in our office, and we did accelerate them a little bit, brought them up forward like Todd talked about, but we have a comfortable schedule because each of them has some complexities that we needed a little time to work through. So I have a summary slide that just talks a little bit about the individual items that are taking place, and then the project budget target is right there on each slide. So the first one with Fisher, you can go to the next slide, Chris. If you look at the site here, you'll notice it's a pretty tight site. And what you see in blue, oh, thank you. What you see in blue is a proposed 3 classroom addition that we're trying to achieve. Now that may or may not have been fully explored in the referendum, but it's clear from speaking with the principal that that's a very needed addition when you tour the school. They have some need for some extra classrooms, and then they right now don't have art or music all the time in a separate classroom. So when we move to the next slide, Chris. So we did a study at each of these schools. We talked to each principal and investigated how they're using each room right now, and we made a summary of the different spaces. And looking at in the middle, the kind of pink color that you see, that is the media center right now. And all 3 of these schools are to get media center upgrades with a maker space. So if you look at this school right now, blue is base homeroom classrooms. Yellow is some support spaces like resources, etc. Green are the gyms. So we've color coded those, and this was really interesting to talk to the principals and understand how their buildings worked, and what their expected enrollment was coming up with kindergarten. So if you go to the next slide, Chris.
RJ.
Oh, RJ's doing it? Oh, sorry. I thought Chris was flipping through I thought Chris was doing your slides. Thanks, RJ. So this is the adjusted proposed plan that we talked to Irene, the principal, about this week. And you'll see a new color on here, orange, which is right under the pink. That is working back in an art and a music classroom for her. But when we went through this with her, because of the bilingual nature of this, she's still projecting that she's going to be a couple classrooms short, right? I think, was it 2 more, Todd? Potentially, depending on how this goes. So we're having some discussions how to work through all that and still provide the 3 classroom addition. But it's a little bit of a tight budget struggle, which we're working through with ICI, and I think Todd and Chris are talking about it. But if we could explore this even further, or if we could work through these classrooms with her, I think she'd be very happy. And we're working this media center out, trying to keep the media centers in the center of the school, expanding it a little bit to get a maker space. And then it should have some equity with what we're doing at Emerson and Edison and all the other schools right now, with the media centers having a maker space. So we're right on track. We've completed what we call schematic design, which is the first phase of design where you kind of lay it out on the table. We've described the mechanical system. We've looked at piping that's going to be replaced. The galvanized water piping will be replaced, and we've had ICI estimate that. So we're right at this first phase where we've got the budget numbers back on Fisher. Next one, RJ.
Yeah, next one.
Yeah, so then this is Jackson, and it has some similar scope. Again, working over the library media center, adding that maker space, new HVAC, replacing the galvanized water piping, corridor light and bright, and structured cable. Pretty much the same elements as Fisher, but not a classroom addition. We are proposing a media center addition, which I'll show you in a minute. RJ? So on this slide, you can see the yellow is existing, and the blue square that you see is where the proposed media center addition is to take place. Go to the next one, RJ. So again, we did this same study with the principal and looked at the existing uses of the building. And right now, the pink that you see is the current space, but that a current LMC space. But if you've ever been in that LMC, it's very, very tight, very small for this size of school. And it also, it's interesting that one door is up on one level and the second door to the library is on another level. It's very confusing. There's a ramp outside. So it has some accessibility and some strange arrangements in there. They're making it work. Lovely people, working really hard, but for this size of school, we would call this media center undersized. And we cannot get a maker space in that area because on either side of it, you can see green assembly space. And we can't, if we put a maker space inside of that, the library will be even smaller. So RJ, if you go to the next one. And this is the second floor, sorry. We're not really, and that's a basement. The only thing with the basement is we are bringing up, we're making sure we don't have student classrooms down there, like any art or music. So on the next slide, the solution, this is the solution slide, where now we don't have any of the major classrooms in the basement. So by doing this pink square, moving the media center up to where the pink square is, we're repurposing the old media center into 2 classrooms, but we can divide that room and bring the floor up. So both of those classrooms will enter off the hallway in the right spots. And there'll be 2 classrooms there. But we're expanding the media center so that we can include a maker space and then still have the correct number of classrooms for this school and have music and art and everything above grade. So that's the big win here by doing a media center addition. We're able to get all the classrooms in there and have a properly sized media center with a maker space. Okay. You can move, that's just the second floor. We had that for the principal just so they could see all the classrooms. And then finally at Jefferson, very, very similar scope again, a lot of parity. Library Media Center addition, we'll talk about that in a minute, makerspace. But here we're also renovating the rest of the office. The secure entry vestibule piece was done last summer, but now we're going to renovate the rest of the office to get that assistant principal's area in there and a larger proper nurse office in that building. New HVAC, replacing the galvanized water, structure cabled, corridor light and bright. Some east parking lot rebuild to get rid of some of the drainage issues off the playground. Some site upgrades there. Go to the next one, RJ. So here again, the yellow is the existing, and then you'll see the blue square. That is the media center addition proposed for this school. This is the existing plan that we've talked about, and you can see where the media center is currently. It's that pink color. Go to the next one. This is the second floor again for the classroom count. And that's the lower level. So same thing, we were taking any classroom space that was in the lower level and bringing it up. And then this is the new proposed plan. So you can see the media center has moved a little bit on the other side of the office. And we've expanded it out in between some of the groves of trees, the couple of trees that are there. But this allows us to get the maker space in this area, and also to the right of it, when we renovate the rest of the office area, we are repurposing a classroom space there into the assistant principal's office and the nurse's area. But by doing this addition, we're not losing any total classroom number counts in the building. If we were not to do the addition, we would probably lose a classroom count. So this is the overall scheme that we're proposing at Jefferson, and we've submitted, all of these have gone to ICI, and we have schematic design budgets back on the first two, and I think they're working on the third one. So we're at a really good point now to make sure we have all the feedback from the principals and move forward, but we have a very comfortable schedule with these projects.
Out of the basement.
Oh, yes, art came out of the basement here. That's what we brought up here. So most of these buildings at some point had to put something in their lower level. And what we've done, like we did at Emerson as well, is brought whatever that function was, whether it was art or music, back up to the main levels. And that lower level can be used for storage or supplies, but we really don't want any major teaching classrooms down there. So we still have a lot of work to do, but we're on a good track, and it was really worthwhile talking to the principals and getting a lot of good input.
Any questions on those three? Comments?
So I'm going to kind of hit all of them, but I'll start with, it looks like Jefferson and Jackson have an addition, and that is to redo the library media space, maker space. And so you're extending out the building. Okay.
Correct.
And then, and just for that item on those two
Just
floors?
for that item, correct.
Okay. Was that original plan, or we didn't have any?
The original plan was money set aside for library media center renovations.
Yep,
So
yep.
what
Didn't
we're
know
looking
exactly.
at is the budget that we have within the building to see if we can get everything to accommodate the proper, layout of the building within the budget. So
Yep.
that's what that represents.
Okay. And then for Fisher, three new additional classrooms. Did I see that there are 4 classrooms that'll be repurposed?
Yes.
Yes.
So help me understand from a classroom sections, how does that impact them?
It helps them out greater than what they have right now. Initially in the referendum, they just had a classroom edition and a stage edition on there, which I'm not sure where the stage come. So as we looked at it, it just said a small classroom edition. So as we looked at the programming of the whole building and looking how the building is laying out, felt that it was to put the 3 classrooms out there on that edition and then repurpose the ones within there to give them the art and music room that they don't have right now.
Right.
Because they're on a cart. So
Right.
we would do that, and it just made more sense of looking at the whole building and how best to lay out the building and how better to utilize some of those spaces out there. Because some of the spaces were offices that were a classroom and things like that.
Yeah.
So we just looked at it as a whole and felt this was the best way to lay out this building with this addition.
Okay, and I don't know at what point, Linda, we talk about, since they're tight already, right, everybody's saying that, and if we have dual language that is getting enrollment that was better than ever expected, and if we were to add, put any other programs there, what do we do? So I just, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, venue. I just kind of want to put something out there as a placeholder that we really do need to talk about that, whether we switch programs or whatever, we need to have that discussion, just,
Absolutely. We
yeah,
actually
moving
spent some
parts,
time
but-
talking about this today, the impact of shifting enrollments because of dual language, you know, and how to cope with that. Plus, that's the shift to all-day kindergarten also is an impact that needs to be considered. So we actually had this discussion today about Fisher, and about you know, just really looking at every school and looking at some of those issues. So definitely that's on for Fisher in particular has, I think, a unique issue with the dual language program, the proposal for the REACH program, and then their monolingual classes are very small, and, you know, how can we balance that better and make better use of the space? So those are definitely things that we're talking about.
Okay, so there is a placeholder for us to bring it to the board in discussion.
Yeah, I would say that they're, yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to mention that just because this was a referendum piece that was really important to the Fisher community when we did the referendum was a performance space or a stage. Like I noticed, you know, you mentioned that. And is there a way that that is incorporated in this? Because that was important that, you know, I know in new elementaries it's maybe looking different, and you know the older schools have what we would call a traditional stage, but is there something in there to give them a performance space to honor that the word that or the commitment that was made during the referendum? Because it's important to me that we keep those.
You can look at it a different way. I mean, we can have portable platforms that they could use the multipurpose room or the gym for as things like that too. We really didn't look at it at building a actual stage or any addition onto that. The current multipurpose room that they have is fairly small. The gym is a good size. The multipurpose room is basically their cafeteria out there. So we could look at, you know, bringing some portable stages out there and having the gym serve dual purpose out there. But we didn't look at anything of like building a stage out there.
Or media center? No, I mean, is that an option?
Well, we're looking at the media center that we have in there was at Fisher is taken, basically their current library is 2 classrooms. They just knocked down the wall on their library. So what we're looking at expanding that into 4 classrooms in that area. It'd be hard, you could do a performance in there. There are little low ceilings in there. I mean, we can definitely look at that.
Yeah, could you
See
go
how
back
we
and
could
look at that?
incorporate
Just
something into
because,
that.
you know, that was an important piece, and yeah.
Kara, can you, a performance space like a play or a.
So like they don't have a stage, and all the other elementaries have one, and so that was a component that community really that was important to them when we did the referendum.
Okay.
And it was said that would be something that would be incorporated when the addition was, whatever size the addition was put on.
Okay.
So I just want to make, you know, I don't know what it, you know, it could look different than what a traditional stage, but just something that, keeping
Could a
that
permanent
commitment.
structure be incorporated into the gymnasium? Because I think that's where, in most of our elementary schools, that's where the stage is. I mean, is that something that we could explore?
Into where, Courtney?
Into the gymnasium?
Gymnasium.
I mean, because I think in at least all the elementary schools I can think of in my brain that we've been into, that's where the stages are. I don't know if space constraints in there, but if that's something that maybe we can incorporate.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that. If we incorporated that into the current gymnasium, they would have to go basically to the west of it, because to the north and to the east, there's no space of that gym. And then if we did do something on incorporated in that, we'd be brushing up against possibly the playground out there. But we can definitely look at it.
It doesn't, I think it can look different, just, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, for what it's worth, a little history in the early 1970s when District 205 was formed. It was formed from Elementary District 3, Elementary District 46, and then York was taken from High School District 88. And Churchville and Fisher come from Elementary District 3. They built their buildings, you know, with different facility requirements than District 46 did, which is why those two buildings, you know, Churchville didn't have an auditorium and Fisher didn't have a stage. And, you know, making them all the same, I think would be good for our community.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have one. In these three buildings that we talked about, it sounds like we're getting kids out of the basements, which, thank you. Are kids totally out of the basement in those three buildings?
Jefferson, yes. Jackson, I think they do some lessons downstairs, not a full-time instructional classroom.
Tutoring,
Like tutoring and things like that. And
Resource room is down there.
yeah.
Fisher doesn't have a basement, so, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Okay.
Getting them
and
out of
then,
there.
do we have other elementary schools where we have kids in the basement? I mean, besides Field and Lincoln, which, you know, obviously totally different.
Hawthorne.
Awesome.
Hawthorne, we do.
They don't really use too much of that down there. We're trying to get them out when we do renovate there
Yeah.
this summer. Jefferson, Jackson. I think that would be it. Hawthorne, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Todd, I had a couple of things.
Mhm.
All these say new HVAC. Is that holistic, whole building, or just where we're renovating, we're upgrading?
At two of them, part of the referendum was to provide air conditioning in the whole building. So basically, we're gonna be ripping out the old univents, putting in, taking out the horizontal univents and putting a vertical univent in the corner, new ductwork, and tie it into a chiller system. So it's pretty much holistic on those.
And is there any grant money or Fed money we can put towards that and refund from so the referendum could add something else, for example, and because a lot of that Fed money, right, is basically for HVAC, for air, for things like that nature. So is it something that we can get a benefit from in this project, or do something else where we're there for economy of scale?
Yes, if there's funding out there, we will look at that. Because these new HVAC systems, as we're putting them in there, if we're going with a VRF system where it has a DOAS dedicated outside air system, or if we're putting in a new air handler or RTU, we're adding bipolar ionization to those units,
Perfect.
which is gonna help.
Great. Which is, I mean, that we should be talking about more, right? You know, I mean, to me, that's important. And then from we talked about committed costs versus not committed. You're still carrying a design and construction contingency on all the work that's left to go, meaning we're on budget, but we're on budget or tracking to the number, but that still has some undefined dollars. That's protection, that's budget protection built in for design and construction. And then you've probably already done a rate review against what we spent on contingency dollars to date on projects that are done. So we kind of hone that bucket in, right?
We didn't hold it, we left it out there, especially Lincoln. There's a sizable chunk out there. We had added a little bit more just in case.
Okay.
But a lot of those contingencies of the future projects are still up there. We really haven't honed those in too much.
Well, especially on the renovation stuff where you're gonna be spending more
Yes.
in unforeseen conditions. Okay. Thanks, Todd.
Anything else?
Next slide.
I had one other thing, sorry. I want to compliment you on the timing of this, of reviewing these now, the renovation jobs. I mean, I think you're months out in front of a typical time frame, which is helpful to have time to review the options and not have this in front of the board in a very quick and untimely fashion. So I think it was well planned out from that timing, so well done. I'd have one nice thing to say. God knows I like buses.
Yeah, it's a refreshing change, right?
It is, right?
Don't get used to it, right?
No, yeah.
So just kind of the 3 additional classrooms really net out to 0 at Fisher because of the reconfiguration of the spaces with both the makerspace and adding the art and music room as replacing. There's 25 existing, and after the addition of the 3, it's still going to be 25.
But they're gaining an art and music.
Right, but as far as traditional class space, it's the exact same.
Because that's, if you look at that, if what we're potentially looking at is having that a 4-section building where they got a bubble in there right now. So they would, if you have that building as a 4-section building, you would need 24 classrooms for your instruction through K through 5. Right now they have 25 because they have 5 at the kindergarten level, I do believe. So as we look at that, one of the things that we could potentially do as we move forward on that is that library media space is taking basically 4 classrooms. It could potentially take 3. We haven't finally designed it yet. And there's some other things that we can look at the program out there too. But yes, you are correct. They have that out there. They are gaining the art and the music. Because we kind of modeled that building. Initially, it was a 4-section building. So when you look at that, that's how many classrooms you would need. If we have to add more on there, then we would have to change it quite a bit. Not quite a bit, but maybe connect it out.
But isn't that part of the concern? That it will need to be bigger because of the programming there?
Well, I think that's a part of a very big discussion that we need to have in terms of, we don't know what's happening with REACH. Is there the dual language? I think is it unlimited? I think there are a lot of decisions about program and that will have an impact on how many classrooms we need there. That needs to be discussed, really. That we've expanded the dual language is more popular. Is it possible to have another school host some dual language classes, for instance? Just as an example, not proposing that. Don't worry. Yeah, but yeah, but we need to think about the impact of program on the space that we need here, and that and with all day kindergarten. So yes, but I think that there can be some things done to perhaps put some limits on the dual language, perhaps, or have some in another school. It doesn't always have to be just in this single school. And then looking at the what happens with the monolingual classrooms. Are they going to get small enough that you can have 2 grades together, for instance? We need to look at this definitely right now. Before we proceed further on this. We spent a great deal of time talking about it today and kind of brought up a lot of questions that we need to continue looking into.
Yeah, we did talk about some concerns about capacity in some of our buildings and enrollment. And enrollment is a very difficult thing to project. Obviously, we've historically do every year enrollment projections in October, which use the cohort survival method, which takes historical trends and moves them up. But the hardest part, of course, is kindergarten, because you don't really have historical trend data. I mean, you have historical trend data of what kindergarten has been, but knowing what or trying to project that or forecast that is very difficult. And so I do think it might be time to bring in another demographic study. We've done them before. They're done periodically, and I think they make the most sense as far as kindergarten, because they look at census data and birth data to try and predict what kindergarten will be, and it might be time to investigate that a little further. I know there's concerns with Field and definitely concerns with Fisher.
Sure.
Jackson is another one that we've talked about in the past, and it's migration patterns and births and things like that are going to impact the elementary districts, and when we have the neighborhood schools and our set boundaries, it can cause capacity concerns, and more knowledge would be helpful to try and project
This is a particularly difficult time to project enrollment for several reasons. One of them is some families left to go to private school when we had remote learning. And to know how many of those are coming, how many of those students are coming back. We think a substantial number, but we don't know that yet. I also learned this afternoon that kindergarten traditionally has been smaller, and then we get an influx of additional students for first grade because they're seeking all-day kindergarten. Now that we will have all-day kindergarten, that trend is going to change. So trying to predict how many kindergartners we're going to have just based on that factor alone. And then the new housing, the impact of that, and then looking at the birth rate. I really strongly recommend a demographic study by an outside firm that, you know, it's that could be very helpful, I think, right now in helping us look at some of these trends and decide the meaning and the impact for the district. I really think it's important. You know, because you just can't right now look at the year before and predict the next year, or look at the last 5 years and predict next year, because this year is so off. So, you know.
No, I think that's a good point, and something we should definitely do. Maybe Chris can find some more cast members from Deliverance to present that for us. And Gordon, you bring up a very good point about Fishers. And the capacity there. So thanks for sparking that discussion. Anything else regarding? Sure.
So what's our window of opportunity here? You know, I'm glad that you all are having those discussions, but, you know, design and all that. So I want to get a sense of the time frame opportunity.
And opportunity in terms of getting a demographic study, making decisions about the additions. Yeah. So we have a little more time with Fisher and Field. And I think in the next few months, we need to be done with the demographic study and make some final decisions about design.
Well, with Field is the biggest one. If
Yes.
you want to do a change to Field, because we were looking to get that one bid out here
In the fall. Yeah.
very shortly, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the crucial one. I mean, because that's a brand new school.
Field is seeing very large kindergarten numbers right now. And so that's a big question mark. Is that going to continue? Is this an anomaly? And even kindergarten numbers right now never stay this way. They usually grow over the summer with move-ins or other factors. So it's, yeah, we need to talk about Fisher and Field.
Right. So I don't know if, you know, how fast these studies can be turned around, but we started these projects early enough because we knew we needed the study, Rob, like you were talking about. And, you know, we have some slack in our schedule. You know, a 60-day window would be very reasonable to still complete Field and any number of these by the fall to bid them out. So I'm not sure of how these studies work, but we have some slack time that we could do. Obviously, Field is probably the most critical for us to finish up, but yeah.
Well, I don't think we're gonna have a demographic study done in time related to Field. As far as Field is concerned, I don't know if White just could look to see if, you know, do some estimates on if we were to make, you know, for a few additional classrooms. It sounds like we have one flex classroom for Field now, and it might be helpful to have a few more. So is it possible to estimate some costs related to that?
Yes, we were talking about that earlier, that each of the 3 neighborhoods have 3 classrooms per neighborhood, and we could easily look at increasing them to 4 so they would be stacked on top of each other classrooms, just similar to Lincoln. Lincoln was designed with a 4-classroom neighborhood pod, and we could look at Field that way too. So you could add between 2 and 6 classrooms depending on how many pods you wanted to increase. And then I'm sure ICI could take a look at the cost.
I think that's a good idea. You know, the other thing pertaining to the Field attendance area, My understanding is there is a developer proposing a 204-unit apartment building on the northwest corner of First and Haven Road, which is in the field attendance area. There's something that that developer's presenting on May 5th at City Hall.
We're all going to.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
And maybe if there's a way to pull the data of what we've seen from student population additions from the apartment buildings that have been built so far, you know, maybe that would be some indicator, and then some adjustment for, you know, if this project is any different than what's been built so far.
Right. There are a lot of, what did you say, Ralph? Oh, strollers.
We got a fifth grader there now, and it's like, where are they all coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, if you could provide us with a weekly stroller count, that would be really helpful. Kind of a traffic study, really. Yeah. Perfect.
Well, with the challenges at Conrad as well, and not challenges necessarily, but the things, the options that we're looking at there, trying to have as much breathing room at Field in this new building we're building just makes sense, because it's closest, you know, it could be maybe, if we are gonna move any programming, it could be an option for us before we build.
Yeah, and then, you know, hand in hand with that, let's take a look at what Edison looks like after all of our construction projects are finished, if how much space we have there as well, and potential for moving some of these programs there as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good point. Anything else, or are we moving on,
A couple
Chris?
more. RJ, if you could move forward.
It's a scary time, you think about it. I mean, we love the pandemic because it gives you great numbers and to build with, like to construct more. But that influx, I mean,
Right.
we can
Keep going to the end.
People will be like, you built the building too small.
Oh, right there.
Exactly. That's,
Instant panic attack.
that's, yes, it does.
Thinking you built the building too small.
That
Because they know the building is gonna be built, right?
right.
Right, well, that's the other thing. New buildings attract families as well. And, yeah.
Well, you're almost talking about a 4-section building now, just like Lincoln, instead of a 3-section.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a
And
good
maybe that
idea.
might just be the right thing to do for future expansion and growth. That will exceed the allocation that we have for $29 million, but
And that, by the way, is exactly what happened at Emerson, is, you know, finished putting an addition on it, and then Kara came to protest that there wasn't enough space. I mean, that was literally my first board meeting as a new board member. And, you know, they had enough money left over in the budget, they quickly put on a second story to the addition and added some more classrooms. And it was full. Yes. Yeah.
so we will look at other options for those buildings. On here is, and the continuation of this is just let you know, every year we've set money aside for summer capital. These are the projects that we have going on right now. The biggest one we have is the field water detention, where the city is doing almost 9 acre-feet of underground detention in front of York, and then we'll come and put field turf on top of that. And along with the gymnasium roof out at York, which is actually leaking right now, and we're gonna try to get that one started sooner than later. They had to cancel a couple volleyball games because of the roof leaks.
York Gymnasium, which gym is it? The old gym or the?
It's over the gymnasium area, so everything on the east side of the building except for the field house. That board recommendation is actually going to the board on the 27th, and we'd like to start on maybe like May 6th.
Quick question, what is the city
2004, this is
timeline on
OSB.
that
That side is
water
Uh,
detention?
We just got the schedule back from them. The building was able to give us that field a week early, so we're looking to start that June 1st. And there'll be heavy construction. They'll be done potentially with all their work by August 15th. If not, maybe a week sooner. And what we're looking at doing is probably letting that site sit for maybe 2 weeks or so before we put the field turf in. So the field turf probably will not be in prior to school starting. We're just worried that the ground settling. We don't want to put the field turf in there and all of a sudden we have some problems out there. There's some other work that we have to do on our end with fencing and some curbs, and we're looking at some landscaping out there and kind of like a monument sign to hide the pump station that they have for that too. But they plan to have their, no later than August 15th, they'll be out of there, done with their work, and then we'll come in and take care of our stuff.
So we should be letting families know that there will be an impact at the start of the school year at York?
No, they'll be
Okay.
done. Once they're done with their,
what do we have to do once
our
they're
stuff
done?
is gonna be the field turf.
Right.
So we'll be, our work will be confined within that area.
Okay,
So, I mean, just like we did with the field turf over there, that's
Okay.
really easy. There's minimal distractions that we'll have with the operations of
the
traffic
drive
flow.
and
Yep.
all the.
Yep.
Okay.
Biggest thing is making sure the city's done, because they're gonna have the biggest impact on the traffic flow.
Hey, Todd, one thing, can I ask the administration to reach out to the city? I know we had talked about adding some parking spots at York, potentially.
Mhm.
My understanding is the city is doing the engineering for that water retention right
Yep.
now. The marginal cost for adding the enough water detention in that Circle Drive site for another, 100-car parking lot has got to be pretty low rather than us taking that ourselves. And even if we never use it, I mean, I'm just asking you to reach out to the city.
We did have that discussion with the city. I'll go back through the notes, but based off of what their indication is, if we added anything out there, we would not probably have to increase our stormwater management out there. I'll get the notes.
That's my point. That is not the favorable situation for our taxpayers. I mean, they write one property tax check. The city can add some capacity to that for far less than, and maybe I misunderstood what you said. but-
Yeah, we asked them when we were out there if we were to expand our parking lot or add more parking spaces out there. The same topic, we touched base with the city with engineers from White and Ken Johnson, the city engineer. And basically, they didn't feel that if we added some additional parking out there, and the only where we could really add some of the parking is kind of the baseball field is, but then we're looking at relocating the baseball field and for future works out there. They didn't feel that if we added any more spaces out there, that would trigger anything for us for stormwater, additional
Oh, okay,
stormwater.
all right, I misunderstood. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what
Yeah,
you said.
sorry about that.
So
Yeah.
they don't think that we would have to add stormwater detention?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Karen brings up a good point, get it in writing.
Yeah, and there's other things they're talking, as we get there, because we're putting even out there some permeable pavers and things like that, that we can help mitigate that too.
Okay, yeah, I mean, because now is the time to plan for that, yeah. All right, thank you.
Just one other thing, Todd. I know we had talked a little bit about maybe as they're doing that work there to help a little bit with that traffic flow going around there on the one corner and widening that out. Is that something that you guys are still considering?
Yeah,
or
we
looking
looked at
into?
that, but you can't really do anything with that because there's a city street there along, combined with our entrance out there. And the way you come in and out of there, you really can't put a turn lane or anything in there because you're still gonna have cars crossing over there. It's just a weird of how that entrance to that off of St. Charles, you can sit there, go straight to our property, or you take that as a city street going around there. So we
Right,
did
right.
look at that, but there was really nothing that we felt that we could do right now.
And when you're coming around from the west, from that city street and coming into our second lane there
Mhm.
towards the high school, can that maybe be widened out a little bit? There's like a kind of a hard corner there. It seems like if there was a little more space, it would help with
You
traffic flow
could,
there a little
we
bit.
could round it off just a little bit.
Just, I was just wondering if you guys, obviously you've already
Yeah, we
looked
can look
into
at
it,
that,
but
because at one
just-
time I was talking about putting like a meridian there and a turn lane, but we really can't do that
with
because
City
those two
Street.
cross over there. But taking that basically where we're putting the stormwater detention, you're talking about the southeast side of that, of kind of
Yep.
softening it up a little bit. We can definitely look at that.
Yeah,
Thank you,
'cause
I
that-
appreciate that.
Yeah, as Beth, it's a great point, because for 20 minutes every morning and 20 minutes every afternoon, it's like a stock car race through there.
Well, it is.
And the crashes are
yeah.
not good.
No.
Maybe an overpass.
Yeah, the traffic over there is, it is.
It is a big game of chicken.
RJ, next slide,
Thank
please.
you, Todd.
Yep. And this is kind of a listing, as we have summer projects for the next couple of years of what we're looking at doing. Just to put those out in front of you, even though we're already talking summer 22, we already have projects that are planned, for the future years. Next slide. And that would be all.
Any last thoughts for Todd?
I just have one quick question. I know I saw it somewhere and I don't, maybe it's in here, I'm missing it. When is the York baseball field area and where's the timeline on that one?
That timeline, actually, can you back
Did I
up?
go back? Did I miss it?
Way towards the front?
Oh,
No problem.
I can do it here. That's fine.
Right, nope, go forward. There we go. Actually, it's down.
Oh, there it is, 2024. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Speaking of the York baseball fields, Chris, is now the time to bring up that one of those houses is for sale.
You can go ahead and bring it up. I only knew about what you told me.
I mean, and I, my information is third hand, but my understanding is not that first house on Hagen's, but the second
Second
house that went on the market yesterday. So that's something we want to look into. They took it off the market.
So Todd, what I remember about this is that we needed to buy, I mean, in order for it to be square, it wasn't just the first house, it wasn't just the second house, but you needed 3 houses in order to square off the York property there.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, and that, clearly takes time and patience if that is the plan. I mean, oh, I don't know. Like I said, my information is third hand. They didn't discuss color.
Well, get some facts.
I told you everything I know.
Yep, that's the one, yeah.
The light blue,
White
500,000.
and light blue.
500.
Right? Was that you offering to write the check?
No, I think that was Todd saying that's the right house.
499.9.
Yep.
There we are.
But again, going back to that point, right? Like we need those kind of 3 houses to square off, and the
Yeah.
other 2 don't look like they're listed right now, right?
Well, I doubt they're ever all coming on the market at
Right,
once.
right. But that's the middle one. That's the middle one of the 3.
That's an excellent idea. That's not, that, exactly. Yeah, that'll clear the whole neighborhood out.
Have the Martinellis move in.
All
So
right, moving on.
the other thing that Todd had bid out the Bryan gravel lot project. So I think we need direction, some indication of where we're going with that project.
And part of that is we have a contractor out there kind of somewhat on the hook, and we don't want to do that to them if we're not going to do this, so they can take it off their books too.
Yeah, that's fair. My understanding is, clearly the city would like to have a partnership with us like they have with the Park District. And I know there's a group within the city council, the newly elected city council, trying to lead the path to giving us another year extension while they formulate their plans, but they're clear that that's got to come from them. So, you know, maybe if we can reach out to Jim Grabowski and see where that stands.
A month ago, you know, the what's the name of that property, you know what I'm talking about, over by City Works or?
Riverside Drive.
Thank you, Riverside Drive. So, that's kind of just as is if we want it. Are you talking about something different?
Yes, yes. You know, actual use of their garage. You know, I know they plan to put an addition on, but I mean, it's got to work for both entities' time schedule. If we invest, I mean, I think they're pretty clear now that if we invest $1.5 million in that lot, it's unlikely we want to invest any more money moving anywhere else. And since we haven't found an ideal solution yet, it just seems like, given everything that's going on, you know, extending that deadline for a year seems to be a good solution for now, while gives us more time to talk to the city and find other alternatives as well.
I also think we could talk about, and I don't know if this is, but just, do we want to just grass the area at Bryan, knowing that we're just looking for a different solution, or do we want to just keep it all?
Yeah,
know, and I don't know what the, I don't know what the
That's a great
answer-
question. So, you know, we could invest the money in, you know, clearing out all that gravel that's there. But, you know, when we started using that lot, I mean, we call it the gravel lot because, I mean, as far back as anyone can remember, that was always a lot covered with gravel, and and it was overflow parking when Bryan had a performance or something, you know, and parents couldn't find anywhere else to park, and it was used a few times a year, and that was that. And so, I don't know, we should have that discussion. Do we want to invest the money to make that a grassy area and not have it available for overflow parking? So, yeah, we should definitely have that discussion. And
you know, not
when should we have that discussion?
soon. Well, not to be selfish, I mean, all the stuff that we had in that gravel lot, I have scattered over 3 or 4 sites right now. So, you know, my department is just all over the place right now because we took everything out of that lot. We got some stuff in the front of Bryan in the parking lot. We got stuff over at Sandburg. We have stuff in the back maintenance lot. We basically kicked out all the teacher parking in the back of Bryan so we could store some of our stuff there. So, you know, extending another year, that's fine. But I do need some type of solution out there so we can get my department back into one place. And
yeah, can you? I mean, could you be able to operate for another year with your new distributed plan?
I can.
You can.
Little
But if
inefficient,
it's another
but
year
I
and then
can.
another, how long is it gonna be till the next solution, I think is what we need to look at, right?
Yeah.
So
And-
if
and
it's a
actually,
year and there's a solution in a year, or if there's a year and that next solution is gonna be finished up 3 years from then, that's a different.
Yeah, and plus,
discussion,
since
right.
we have the Abbey now, I parked some stuff behind the building there too.
Right, that's a good point. That's a big site.
Well, it just, you know, I'm going on the eve of 2 years on this board, and we have kicked this can every single meeting and every single discussion. And we just have to make a decision about it, if I could just be so frustrated about it, because, you know, we're waiting for everything to see, the pieces to all be perfect, and it doesn't seem like it's happening. Whether it's on our end or the city's end, this is not about placing blame, this is about, we need to make a decision, because piecemealing Todd's department all around town is not an efficient or effective solution in my mind. So I completely agree, we need to talk about this sooner rather than later and make a decision. And be done with it. It's
I mean-
literally, it's been 2 years
Yep.
and there's not been a meeting, we haven't talked about it.
10 years ago that we started parking stuff there as a temporary solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
there's never going to be the perfect solution. And that can be said for any problem, but because,
So
things
I wonder,
change.
I feel like, I feel a little, I don't know enough about this issue, and I'm wondering, Chris and I talked about having another Finance and Operations Committee meeting within the next month, and perhaps we could bring some recommendations to that, and talk with the city, and, just get the background, let me get filled in on what the issues are, and, come with a recommendation for, I would assume this group would make a recommendation then to the full board. Right. Okay, so if we are going to have another meeting sooner rather than later, if that would be all right for us to.
Yeah,
to do that.
I think that would be a great idea.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, if we can do, so we have a new mayor, we have city council has had substantial turnover. We just need to communicate with them, let them know, the timeline in which we're operating. I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think they pushed their plans out because their revenues are down, because, sales tax revenue is down, et cetera. But I think if we can just, sit down with the city and figure out both of our perspectives. I mean, Courtney, you've got a great point that we've been kicking this for 2 years because the right solution hasn't
Well,
magically
our
appeared,
recommendation
so.
may be wait another year, but we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
yeah, but
Well, yeah,
let's-
and I mean, that's what I mean, when I hear wait another year, that's
Yeah.
generous on their part and the city's part because it's our obligation to make
Yeah.
a decision,
Yeah.
but like, we just have to make a decision. I mean,
Yeah.
like Todd's department, especially now if we add the Abbey, I mean, there's just, you can't keep piecemealing this problem, in my opinion.
Okay.
So, yeah, that would be great, Linda, and of course, you're new to this, whole like headache
So,
of it,
yeah,
but yeah.
Add that to your 60-day to-do list.
All right.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're considering May 13th as a potential date for another finance committee meeting. Hope that works for everyone.
It's my anniversary, so my wife will be very happy with that.
Oh, boy.
Exactly.
So we've, I knew that was going to be a long item and the facilities update, so I wanted to hit that first while we were still full of energy. And, but I do want to hit another big item, which is the technology report. So, so I know that Nick and RJ are here to discuss the technology report.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. All right, I first want to thank everybody for having Nick and I here tonight. We appreciate it. I also want to thank the Board of Education for the tremendous opportunity you've given me over the last year at Elmhurst. I've worked very hard to honor that opportunity by taking a deep dive into the functions of the technology department. And I tried to weave myself into the fabric of the instructional technology workflow to find out how the efforts of the tech department were reaching our students. I was a frequent member of weekly meetings at our technology services team, our network team, our data team, our TSI program, our EC5 and 612 L&T meetings, our first team meetings, our technology meetings, and et cetera, et cetera. I rolled up my sleeves and worked alongside members of the tech department, even in things like building mobile carts for interactive flat panels. I completed vendor walks. I visited teachers to hear about their experiences using tech, and I spoke to parents about their interpretation of their child's use of technology. I did my best to get involved with a goal of making a formal recommendation to the board about what I felt could be improved. As my time here at Elmhurst starts to wind down, I am sharing this information with the hope of presenting the most accurate reality of how technology functions at D205 and recommending what I honestly believe is needed to bring greater success. That being said, let's talk about airplanes. I'm hoping by using the commercial airline industry as an example, I can engage your experience of flying to the instructional technology experience here at D205. So please take a look up at the screen. And you're going to see a pictorial example of what a flying experience was like circa 1960 versus what it's like now. If you take a look at these two images, notice some of the size and spatial differences between the then and now. The 1960 images show passengers engaged in their flying experience, 5 seats per row, an aisle wide enough for 2 small children to fit side by side. Now, if you look at the circa 2015 image, it also shows passengers engaged in their flying experience, but this time it's 6 seats per row across, and an aisle just wide enough for a thin drink cart to fit through. Now let's take a look at some of the specifics of what I'm showing you. The evolution of the flying experience. What has changed? In the 1950s and 60s, the average seat pitch, the distance between the back of the seat cushion and the chair in front of you, was 35 inches. Today, the average seat pitch is roughly 31, with some budget airlines going as low as 28 inches. The average width of an airline seat has shrunk from 18 inches to about 16 and a half. But it's only a few inches. How could it possibly impact people? Well, whatever the motivation is, the airline industry has made some changes. They shrunk seat sizes by 1.5 inches and shrunk the space between seats by 7 inches in some cases. This helped airlines fit more passengers into a plane that remained the same size. Great idea for a fiscal perspective, but one of the big problems with this idea is during that same time frame, to 1960 to 2015, the average passenger also changed. Instead of people getting smaller to fit the smaller spaces on airplanes, people actually moved in the opposite direction. According to a 2016 report by the CDC, the average American men in 2016 was 15 pounds heavier than they were 20 years ago. Definitely, yeah. The American woman, that number is 16.2 pounds. Now, to put a little rubber to the road on that, what that actually looks like from a space perspective, 15 pounds for men looks like they've added 2.5 inches to their waistline. For women, the additional 16 pounds looks more like 3.2 inches. Americans have gotten bigger, but the space on airplanes has gotten smaller. How could this affect the flying experience of passengers? Well, for the average American flyer, this is what a few inches of difference might feel like. Cramped, tight, limited, and frustrating. To contextualize what this feels like to people, I just quoted Representative Peter DeFazio of Oregon, who was the chairman of the House Transportation Committee. He said it best. I want to get the CEOs here someday, and I'm going to get some of these seats, and I'm going to put them in them, and I'm going to keep them there for 4 to 5 hours and see what they think about what they're doing to people. I don't know how many people I know that leave an airplane after flying for 3 to 4 hours and are excited to hop back in another flight. In fact, most people I speak with, including my own experience, after people leave an airplane, they immediately start talking about what was bad, or what went wrong, or what could have been better. The impression for a lot of airline passengers is that the airline industry is shoving more people into a smaller space to prioritize the bottom line. Based on the practice of shrinking seat size and shrinking space between seats and adding more passengers to planes that remain the same size, it's hard to argue differently. The experience of airline passengers has suffered over the years because airline companies have not prioritized the needs of the passengers they serve. Now, how does this relate to us? Well, as technology evolves, so must our expectations for supporting it. Just in the last 13 years, since 2009, these are some of the things that have changed. In 2009, it was the first time the iPhone was capable of handling turn-by-turn navigation. In 2010, just 11 years ago, the iPad was first released. 2011, Acer came out with its first Chromebook. 2013, first smartwatch. 2014, Amazon introduced us to Alexa. 2015, Bluetooth hearing aids were released. 2016, Oculus Rift virtual reality glasses hit the first commercial version. And in 2017, Google Meet, the video conferencing app we all use so much in the spring, was first released. According to the observation of Moore's Law, technology advances doubles nearly every 2 years. Everything in this list, and a significant number of things not on this list, reference technology that is or can be used to help students. With technology changing so fast, how has D205 evolved to handle the changing needs of our instructional technology goals? Since 2009, roughly 13 years, the district has added over 10,000 new learning devices. This includes faculty and staff laptops, student Chromebooks, and iPads, to name a few. That's a 287% increase in the number of devices that have come to the district. This is in addition to thousands of additional devices like classroom projectors, interactive whiteboards, interactive flat panels, etc. We also expanded both our internet capacity and security to efficiently support the increase in web-enabled devices. We've tried to stay aligned with purchasing new technology over the years, but how have we supported our end users' experience? We brought in more tech, but are we supporting it efficiently? Are we shoving more devices into a plane while also fostering not the most positive user experience? Since 2013, in that same time frame, this is the number of people we've added to the tech department. Since 2009, the district has added over 9,000 devices. At the same time, we've added 0 tech staff. This looks like having the same number of people to support 3,100 devices as it does over 12,000 devices. Our airplane hasn't gotten any bigger, but we keep shoving more seats in it. This has had a negative effect on the technology department as a whole and has added to the consistent yearly turnover rate, which is also displayed. The technology department has done an amazing job in trying to keep up, but it feels like we're reacting to circumstances instead of creating them. We're good at trying to fix problems, but I want to be good at avoiding problems. This, specifically, is our award-winning Those Who Excel technology department, with some opportunities for some new positions identified. The tech department is made up of 4 primary teams: the technology services team, the multimedia and AV team, 2 of which are here tonight, the network services team, and the data and information systems team. Based on what I've seen this past year, I feel that we need to add 4 positions. I feel these positions will be best served on the tech services team, the network services team, and as part of the administrative support. I recognize that adding new positions has an impact on our bottom line, and I take this very seriously. To add some context to this request, let's take a look at how Elmhurst compares to neighboring districts. Now, this chart is a little bit different than the one that you have in Board Book. We were receiving some information late from some of the districts we reached out to, so we updated this graph with the latest information that we had. This chart provides some comparison information of local school districts and the technical non-tier 1 positions they have in relation to their student population. So if you look at the first column, those are our districts. If you look at the second column, it's the student population of those districts. If you look at the third column, it's the technology staff. Again, not tier 1, not the TAs, but anyone tier 2 and for a technical position. The next column talks about the number of buildings that those districts have, and then the next column talks about the student to tech position ratio. If you scroll your eyes down, you can see us where it says current Elmhurst pre-K through 12. I started looking for comparison districts that were pre-K through 12. I then reviewed the top 25 ranked school districts in Illinois, according to 2021 Niche Assessment. The Niche is a data analyzing website focused on schools. The closest school district to us, pre-K through 12, although it has two less buildings, but is a similar student population, is Barrington. As you can see by the numbers, we are sitting on a ratio of 570 students to every 1 technical position. The next closest is Lake Zurich with 395. With the recommendation of adding 4 positions, not only does it fill needs we currently have, but it also puts us closer to roughly 400 students per every 1 technical person, which gets us a little bit closer to our comparators. Remember the airplane? Now put your airline passenger experience hat on again. Think about how your flying experience has been. Think about how it could be better. Think about what the airlines would have to do to make your flying experience better in the future. Consider how fast technology is evolving. What can we expect moving forward? This is a 3-year roadmap for what's coming for us. With technology changing so fast, we are looking at what the future holds. Now, these are just some of the basic things that we're looking at. We have our K-5 teacher laptop refresh we just completed. We started phase 1 of our IFP integration. We just started piloting our 612 display pilot. We've upgraded a ton of access points this year across our elementary and our middle schools. And those kind of actions are just going to continue over the next 3 years, if not more. Now I'm going to turn this next piece over to my colleague, Mr. Stoyes.
Okay, hi everyone. Before we take a look at the infographic, I just wanted to say that this is actually the first time I'm meeting most of you in person. So thank you for welcoming me. All right, let's take a look at some of the numbers that are displayed here. The first one is 2013, and that's the number of unique applications, websites, and extensions accessed by our students and teachers over the past 3 months. That number doesn't mean much without context, but what it shows is that we still are looking for a lot of common systems and platforms to leverage throughout our district. And that there aren't a lot of common experiences across those grade levels as we think about ed tech tools being introduced and utilized. It's kind of like the Wild West out there as we continue to identify and solidify supports for teachers and students. 1,194 new iPads were also introduced across pre-K through 12 in the past 12 months. This introduces new applications not captured in the number to the left, such as Clips, Keynote, and other built-in software. These new devices also mean additional training and knowledge, one that requires a firm partnership between the tech department, learning and teaching, and our classroom educators. The recommended MDM position that RJ previewed earlier, would it be invaluable as we think about these student experiences, creating through student creation, student experiences, as we build bridges between our departments and the classroom for our students. 150 plus interactive flat panels are projected to be operating in the district next year, and more are on the way. Required training and continued support are needed to ensure these devices are maintained and effectively leveraged. We also require follow-up support from these devices, both from a technical perspective and an instructional perspective. Formal structures such as new teacher institute training, building level support, and discovery are all possibilities and currently not a part of our practice. And finally, 350 plus pilot devices. These include Chromecasts, Apple TVs, and wireless adapters that have been implemented as parts of various pilots across the district over the past 12 months that aren't captured in some of the other charts that you've seen. Continued change requires a base knowledge of these and an understanding of how to leverage devices in ways that feel natural. These devices make connections easier, seamless, and support is needed to build an understanding and flow that allows student experiences that feel interactive as teachers feel confident and more engaged in what they have in their classrooms. Looking back on this year, here is a very small snapshot regarding some of our PD on Institute days, with a focus on instructional platforms, which you can see in the upper left-hand corner on the November asynchronous training. You can see that our time is being spent building a foundation in terms of ed tech tools and meaningful interactive student experiences. The tools that are up here, the roughly 8, 12, 14, 17 that are there are 17 of the roughly 2,013 different platforms that we're seeing operating in the district this year. In fact, as we continue looking at some of this, in January, a day devoted to training on workflow management and teacher training leveraging their new iPad devices, 85.6% of staff agreed that the day would lead to improved learning outcomes for our students. Those feelings were confirmed during class visits in March, showing a roughly 48% increase in student agency observed in the district from last year to this year. And now, as we begun piloting new platforms to introduce more equitable supports, we see 91 educators across our 13 buildings involved in a district pilot to help identify and implement ed tech tools across the district. And there's still even more ahead. Supports for student ownership and parent engagement tools like Seesaw, identifying a learning management system, working through the Student Online Personal Protection Act, also called SAPA, and leveraging systems to identify correlative and comparative data regarding ed tech implementation and use. For all of this, we can see a clear, ambitious streams of work ahead and opportunities for more targeted professional developments and supports district-wide. All of this demonstrates the need for technology department positions identified and support around knowledge acquisition and foundational classroom support regarding technology and ed tech tools. With this in mind, we identified the need for technology coaches. Looking at our timeline, in 2014, we began to address this need as a district, implementing a technology coaching program of 5 coaches, 2 at York and 3 at the middle school level, 1 for each building. However, in 2016, we moved away from this model, at the same time increasing the number of devices in our district from 5,700 to 9,400. In doing so, the intention was to integrate technology more holistically. However, without a commitment to ed tech, we left ourselves to implement these skills based solely on the current knowledge of the coach or teacher. The unintended consequence was that technology-specific training was largely forgotten. Playing that forward, when COVID hit in 2020, our teachers had limited direct instructional support regarding technology and no established procedures for instructional technology training. Instructional technology questions were also left in a state of purgatory. What happened next was remarkable. Our coaching team pivoted to learn and introduce technology across the district, focusing efforts on student safety, SEL, technology, and instruction. Looking at these supports, coaches led significant efforts for identifying and building base knowledge using EdTech, and the district continued to build coaching capacity with EdTech tools and strategies. Without a doubt, coaches helped us identify and expand on the successes of this year, and a stated commitment to these roles focused on technology would allow us to keep this positive momentum and address some of our most foundational areas of growth. You can also see on the slide where it says opportunities. Those are just some of the feedback that we were able to get from staff and administration, as well as coaches themselves, in terms of just seeking how has technology been for you this year. Being able to support and use technology and new tech resources was mentioned as a particular help, and from coaches specifically, as priorities shift, what can be made clear? Are we shifting back to technology, focuses on instruction, etc.? And I will toss it back to RJ for this next one. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. So culmination of that presentation was this is our final conclusion and recommendations. I do think overall the district would benefit from bringing in 9 new positions outlined in the image below. 1 network and operations manager, which would be a new position, 1 new MDM manager and technology integration specialist, 2 new Tier 2 technology support technicians, and 5 coaches. The priority of this recommendation is rooted in what I believe to be best for our kids. In education, nothing we do matters unless it helps our kids, and this outline illustrates how we sandwich our students and teachers in instructional technology support. Our technology assistants are the Tier 1 technical support options for teachers and students. Under this model, TAs become part of the technology department in some capacity. This will allow us to set priorities and facilitate training for our TAs. Each TA is supported by a specific Tier 2 technology support specialist. The technology coaches will support our instructional coaches in ensuring our classroom teachers have the training and guidance needed to help accelerate learning. Technology coaches will work with digital resource vendors to develop and present trainings for teachers. Tech coaches will be supported by the MDM device manager, a technology integration specialist, and the director of instructional technology. Based on what I've learned from my analysis, we are at an important time in our technology evolution. The district has done a phenomenal job purchasing new learning devices to stay on par with the way technology has evolved. But I believe it is in the best interest of our students to move forward with the structure as outlined. I'm sharing this with you myself and sharing with each of you as decision makers for the district. Our goal in this analysis and recommendation is to sustain and build upon the successes we've seen this last year. Although I've referenced this a number of times as a recommendation, I truly believe it is more of a necessity. This will expand the technology department to better support the current and future needs of our schools This will also increase the capacity of the learning and teaching department and the technology department to collaboratively work together to support both the current and future learning opportunities of our kids. Thank you.
Questions for RJ?
I didn't just ask, do you have a cost associated with this?
Right now, we have some general ideas. We have not kind of gotten too deep into the weeds in that yet.
Can't hear.
Can you hear me? Okay. Once we have some more specific guidance, I was thinking we can dig a little deeper into the specifics of what the cost of something like that would look like. But before we got into that, I can follow up with Chris. I wanted to present the recommendation first.
Let me just, I'm sorry to, but the coaches that you referred to on the second to last slide, the coaching program, 24 coaches in 2018 and 24 coaches in 20, those are positions that are in place right now?
Correct.
Technology coaches, are those teaching?
Instructional coaches. They're not technology coaches.
These are instructional coaches. Okay. And you're not, are you proposing replacing some technology coaches?
No, my recommendation is to add 5 additional positions as coaches.
So are you saying that there's no technology coach, right? Like in each of the breakdowns you have, right? Like, let's see, early childhood and then all the elementaries, you're adding 3 positions in. 1 technology coach that would handle the middle school and 1 that would handle York.
Right.
So none of those coaches positions are there at all, and the instructional coaches for our teachers are handling the technology aspect that you're talking about?
Right now, through kind of a shared relationship with our instructional coaches and our classroom teachers, they address technology to the best of their abilities. Yeah, there's not a defined technology coach with a priority of bringing tech into the classroom specifically. What that looks like from a classroom perspective is that when a teacher has a question about something having to do with tech, or they want to implement something or try something, they lean on our instructional coaches. At that point, based off of the instructional coach's responsibility, their current plate, what they have on it, their priority is the coaching cycles and supporting the teachers in that realm. It's not focused on tech and bringing tech into the classroom. Well, the tier 2 support is just that. It's support. When I say support, I mean if one of our teachers is having trouble accessing a control system in their classroom, they want to work a projector, they want to get something flowing, like for example, our pilot, bringing in the middle school display pilot, we want to try something new, they would lean on the technology support to come in, check network settings, make sure all the connections are available, making sure that it's flowing between the different devices. But if a teacher were to look at one of our tier 2 supports and go, what's the best way to integrate this into my classroom? Here's where my curriculum is. The tech support person is going to look at them cross-eyed and I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's kind of been the problem that we've been running into. Exactly. The technology coach would be working directly with teachers in the classrooms, would be working directly with the schools, would be supported by the MDM device manager and our director of instructional technology to identify the goals, the priorities, and we'd be able to work specifically with the instructional coaches to make sure, number 1, that they had that idea and support how they were going to bring it into the classroom, but then number 2, if an instructional coach was focused on their coaching cycles and couldn't get in there to help the teachers or a specific teacher with a specific purpose, now we have another resource for that.
So if you look at slide 15, I mean, when we brought in devices, we brought in technology coaches. And then we moved to the one-to-one devices and we said instructional coaches. But then we had all kinds of new curriculum come out. And so those instructional coaches were pulled to do curriculum. And now we have instructional coaches doing technology integration in learning and teaching, classroom. But then that technology support that a lot of the teachers, they don't know it in a big organization. There is a need for the technology piece.
Well, Karen, actually, everything you just described is 100% correct. I do have a wonder, though, about that, what you mentioned about instructional coaches supporting or bringing technology into the classrooms. That is not currently their priority. Their priority is the curriculum that's established and supporting the teachers through their coaching
But
cycles.
I guess the curriculum is integral with technology. I mean, every kid has a device in their hands almost all the time, or at least I know the secondary do. And so I would think that our instructional coaches are doing a lot of work with technology. You just can't separate their work from technology, right? But you're feeling like we need some people in that core or additional to that core that, how would they, because I think we've had this has been the debate ever since I've started using technology in schools of do you focus on the technology or the curriculum, and how do you meld those two things together? And so I don't, I guess I need to understand a little bit more about how those new coaches would support curriculum, and use of it in the classrooms. But in addition to that, I think your other positions maybe are worthy of some discussion as well. The systems. Okay, and I lost what slide that I was on with the. Okay. Yeah, number 9 is a good one to look at what we have now and what you're proposing, adding, what people are doing. And the network and operation, I'm wondering what your priorities are. If in looking at this, is the network and operations manager, it seems like you're kind of thin on the network technology side, maybe?
Yeah, no, I agree, Linda, 100%. Looking at the overall department as a whole, I really tried to look at it from a totalities perspective, not just specifically what the tech department would need, because what I found was that what the tech department needs is an avenue into the learning and teaching workflow in our classrooms. We operate currently almost next to each other and not woven into each other. And what I mean when I say that is if a teacher has a problem with something, let's say Clever, an app isn't working correctly in Clever, they look at the tech department for help. But the tech department, as a tech services department, doesn't serve those integration systems into the classroom. They're not asked about bringing them in. They really don't know. They lead, or they take the support from the L&T department's lead. The problem, though, is that when L&T, they're doing some amazing things in terms of bringing resources into the school, but when they get them in or want to get them in, that's where the trouble starts. Because once they're in, following it through, making sure teachers are supported, making sure it's integrated correctly, making sure it's supported in the long haul, that's where we start to waver. That's where things become complicated and more complex than they need to be, in my opinion. I think that the recommendation that I'm making, not only from the tech department perspective, but also from a coaching or instruction perspective, I've seen the benefits of a coach specific or specific to technology. I've seen teachers adopt things at a much quicker pace. I've seen students have resources and support when they need them. I've seen parents have someone at the school that they can call and get help with how to work through an application or how to work through some kind of a homework program that currently, if that happens here in D205, we don't have those resources established. And I understand and I agree with you in terms of instruction. Technology and instruction, they go together. They're not separate. But unless it's prioritized, that integration, unless it's prioritized to bringing into the classrooms in an efficient manner, we get it to the door, we open the door, and then it starts going slowly after that. That's what I've seen.
That's okay, go ahead.
because if you look at your flow chart of proposal, you've got 4 of the 6 tech coaches are reallocating current instructional coaches. And so that's why I was trying to get, like, have us remember where we've been is, teachers who knew technology and really could do that technology coach in the classroom, in the building. They were pulled, or, they volunteered to, take that position for a couple years. Some people were stronger in instruction. And so one question I have is, this is ideal. Is there a scenario where, we're used to piloting, right? We know what issues we have, or the needs that we have, and we're trying to design a solution to meet those needs, that we can do it in a pilot, what's the best way? Is it this off the bat, or is it something a little bit pared down of trying to figure out that instructional coach, maybe not have so many, to what you're thinking, Linda? Those are the sorts of things I was wondering.
Karen, I appreciate
is there
your.
ideal, and are there other scenarios where we can, I'm going to call it pilot, but from a lack of, get our arms wrapped around, what's the sweet spot of people, process, and workflows?
Right.
Because that's how I'm looking at it, from where we've been. And
Right, and that is my bias. I'm coming in with, it's my first year, so I don't know the
Yeah.
history and kind of how things have
Yeah.
evolved. I do know that, from a cabinet position and from working with the learning and teaching department, this is something that we've been working at for most of the year. We've been very lucky to, and thank you for opening up the position of Director of Instructional Tech. It's been a tremendous help to the overall process of the district. And as I have worked closely with Nikki and Scott and Nick to really kind of dig into the specifics of that, it's hard, right? Because we look at our instructional coaches and we see all the wonderful things that they're doing, especially this last year. And to look at the benefits that they bring the district, I can't look at that and say that tech is more important than all that they've been bringing. I wouldn't, because I've seen the amazing things that they've done this year. But at the same time, I can't look away from what I think is something that we need, something that's going to be very helpful. It's like telling your kids, you got to eat your carrots, but you can't eat your broccoli if you eat your carrots. They're both vegetables. They're both phenomenal. Which one do you not eat? It's just a matter of how full you are. So, looking at that, I do see the value of our instructional coaches, and at the same time, I think we could benefit tremendously from technology coaches if formulated the right way.
okay, so if I keep going from the thought process of people, process, and workflows, you're recommending tech, which is under you. You're recommending some tech coaches that would be under,
The instructional tech coaches would be under the L&T department,
okay, and then the instructional coaches under,
the L&T department.
okay.
No, this is a big integration between the two departments. What I'm proposing, it's walls being broken down, and something that I've had the opportunity, like I said, for the last year or so, especially to work very closely with Nikki, Scott, and now Nick. And when we're working together, it seems like walls just keep falling down. We see opportunities before they happen. We plan for things. What I saw Nick do this year, and our instructional coaches, as well as some of the members of the tech department, with supporting the virtual Apple support conference that we had 13 members of the Apple community here and hosted everything virtually online. Teachers had choice of what they wanted to attend. I mean, that was this side of amazing in the time frame that he did it. And I saw it happen because those walls were broken down between L&T, between tech. We got things done quickly. We moved very fast. And as Nick mentioned, the feedback we got from the teachers was tremendous. So I've seen the benefits of it, especially when it's working well, and I think we can continue that.
And who would be under innovation with Nick and Scott? I thought there was something in your proposal. No? just you and
The
learning and
big,
teaching?
yeah, from a learning and teaching perspective, the technology coaches, the 5 I'm proposing that's the sweet spot for them.
Okay,
From a
kind of like
techno-
matrix management sort of thing, because, I mean, this is where, the technology breaks down all the silos and everybody's
Right.
working together, and like Linda, articulated, it breaks it down even from education and classroom standpoint.
Mhm.
So.
I am making, I think what you're referring to, Karen, please correct me if I'm wrong, is inside what I submitted to board book, there was a couple other adjustments to some of the positions. So for example, our technology services manager, right now he manages a team of 6. Hopefully when we bring the TAs into the technology department more on a formal basis, he's gonna move from managing 6 people up to like 19 or 18. So I wanted to honor that change in his position, or change in his responsibilities. Also, in the data and information systems team, the position or the role of systems analyst 1, we have 2 people in that role right now. I think one of those positions should be expanded to be a systems integration specialist, meaning focusing specifically on which systems connect with PowerSchool so that our data can flow between them. Clever, Apple Classroom, just a couple of the examples that we would use. Right now, we don't have someone specific in that role to work alongside L&T to make sure things are flowing the correct way.
Yeah.
If there's a problem, who specifically knows the system to go back and help you get it fixed? In the current model, and I kind of tried to illustrate this, was that it's a ticket that just goes into a queue, and whoever picks it up does their best to try to close the ticket, which is what the old priority used to be. And what we're trying to do is kind of get out of that and understand what is the problem? Why did the ticket come in the first place? Is the system not working? Because if it's not working, that impacts not just the one kid I got the ticket about, that impacts a number of kids across multiple schools potentially. We need someone to be so connected to it that they can see that, they understand what's going on to avoid it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I can make a comment, I certainly see the need to keep the plumbing running. I mean, and you've made a point of how many things we've added. The trick is to figure out district-wide how to do this in an FTE neutral way, which I will defer to Linda with that challenge to put on her 60-day list. So that's day, I don't know, that's probably day 10 for you now. And then the other thing I'd like, this is the 5-year anniversary of instructional coaches. And the superintendent at the time was asked the question, because we were running a consistent $1 million surplus, if you had an extra $1 million, what would you do? And the answer was, I would hire instructional coaches. And I think that's a tremendous idea. Now we have 24 of them, and I'm thinking that's more than $1 million a year. I think this is a very good opportunity to review cost versus benefit that we've been getting from the instructional coaching program. And, take it as an opportunity, to get more value for the money we're spending. And maybe that means a little restructuring.
I wanted to say, first of all, having only been here a few weeks, I have found the tech department to be extremely responsive and accessible. And that tone, every request I've made has been met with cheerfulness and a quick resolution. And that starts with you, RJ, and I want to say how much I appreciate that. And looking at the staffing, it does look like, we need to really think about how we're best using staff. I think kind of the elephant in the room is that we're going to be getting you're leaving for another position, we're getting a new tech director. I think to make a big change right now would probably be best for this to be studied a little bit longer. And I think it's really valuable to look at your observations, your study this year of what's going on, what's going well. And again, it's such an odd year. We relied more on technology this year than we ever have before, and hopefully ever will again, in terms of delivering almost all of our instruction for a significant part of the year. So I think to take this, and there hasn't been an extensive discussion about this proposal with cabinet that I know of, at least, or not since I've been here, and with the instructional leaders, the teaching and learning department and so forth. And I think to continue that discussion and then continue it with a new person in your position would be very valuable. But I would also encourage you, if there's something urgent, in terms of support, again, keeping things working, having a network systems that are working and can be addressed, problems can be addressed immediately. It saves a lot of money in the long run to have enough people with that. But I'm kind of thinking that this should. I think the report is very valuable, and we can decide whether we want to present a report at a meeting with some recommendations. But I think to think about changing the staffing right now would probably. I just think we need to talk about it a little bit more. And
Absolutely, no, and that makes a lot of sense. And I'm definitely up for that. I just, if I could throw this out just as a caution, of course, me taking this opportunity at the worst possible time for this purpose, it just, is what it is. But you're just acknowledging that, and I agree with you, Elena, just recognizing the circumstances that we're in. My only suggestion is just not to put it too far behind, because it is. The options are there.
I understand, and I hope we can take what you've done this year and hand that to the new person who can continue, not start over.
Yeah.
And
I just had one question. Looking into just more short-term things, while I agree, Linda, that this would be a good thing to have to have when we're moving forward. Is there, with our instructional coaches and then our technology support people, is there training or anything that we can do to kind of bridge that gap a little bit and have the technology people be able to help with some of the instructional pieces more and vice versa? Or is it just merely like not enough hours in the day for those people that are already doing everything they're doing in those roles?
Honestly, I think to serve that purpose, I think our sweet spot there is the MDM, Technology Integration Specialist. That person would be part of the technology department, so they would know the ins and outs of all of our MDM systems, our Apple School Manager, our CleverTouch, Impact Plus MDMs, our Google Workspace MDMs. They would know all of those things as their role, and part of their role would be to provide that training and support for our instructional coaches to get it into the classrooms. In collaboration with our Director of Instructional Technology, I do feel that they can develop a plan in the right amount of time to make sure that our instructional coaches are supported. They have the training that they need, get those things up and running. But the current structure that we have, our Tier 2 technology support technicians are Tier 2 technology support technicians. I mean, they're trying to keep the devices, that I mentioned up and running and everything working. So when it comes to asking them to train a certified teacher on how to use a resource, not that I don't think it's in their capacity, but it's beyond where their priorities have been. They're really trying on keeping things running instead of planning and preparing and getting ready for the things that are coming next.
Okay. I guess I was just thinking about a little bit of crossover with, you said that technology really isn't focusing on how it's being used in the instructional piece, and the opposite for the instructional coaches. So I was just wondering if there might be anything to help make that connection a little bit, or have a little bit more for those, the people that we have to offer in those areas, I guess. But
If I can jump in there too, I think it's also important to keep in mind that our Tier 2 technology support specifically went to school or has training in device specific management. So networking, connection, all those different types of pieces. They are not educators. They did not go to school for education or think about or have been an educator in a classroom, right? So when we're also thinking about larger term projects, or we're thinking about professional development strands, bringing on different vendors or ways that we want to create more cohesive experiences across the district, that it requires kind of a different training set when you think about like, how are we thinking about what those experiences mean in the classroom for our students, as opposed to kind of like, how is the technology operating within that space, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
You know, and to expand that thought, as we transform our libraries into media centers, we have a wonderful staff of librarians that I think in a matrix structure you can also use to help you implement new technologies and instructional technologies within their buildings. So please don't forget that tremendous resource that we have.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we'll take this back to cabinet and have some discussion about it and about next steps. And I don't know that this is ready for a board report at this point, but.
Yeah, probably not,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, the sooner that we can come and revisit this and
Yeah.
make sure that we are still capable of operating in
Yeah.
the very high customer service way that you guys have done a great job with. And then considering all the resources that we have, maybe rearranging a few things can get the resources that you need to more effectively, deliver technology to our teachers without increasing headcount. My gut tells me that resources are there. We just need to redeploy some people. So. All right, moving, Chris, are we?
Thank you.
Thank you, RJ.
Thanks, RJ.
So those were, when I put the agenda together, I thought those were going to be the long-term, the long agenda items. So hopefully we're going to start churning here.
Next is like 10 minutes beginning to end. Right.
I am. Thank you, Ram. All right. So we finished item F and item E. So I'm going to go back up to start with letter A. And the Cottage Hill and First Student contracts is B. A and B are both 3% increases. With the current transportation market, with the bus driver shortages nationwide, I felt like negotiating a 3% increases on these two bus contracts. I felt really good about it. Both are providing really good service and have been for many years. As you know, next year we are going to be transporting Lincoln students to Edison and Hawthorne and Bryan, so that's going to be a new additional routes. And I feel like having a long-term service provider is definitely best. The spot we're with the bus contract is we're on a year-to-year now, so a 3% increase seemed like a good deal, and so those are those two. So, any questions about the bus contracts? They'll be on the April 27th board agenda for action items for approval, and I wanted to make sure, see if we had any questions from any of the board members on them.
The Lincoln kids going to Bryan's, not more routes, right? Maybe. 'Cause the Lincoln
Maybe
kids were going
one.
To Bryan anyway.
Maybe one route, or you're right, it can be incorporated. Well, hopefully, we'll see how many more students that is. Those are all the 5th grade students from Lincoln going to Bryan. But if they're within the 1.5 miles, they're not bus eligible. So it would be only the ones that live a little further. That would be additional.
Karen, did you have something?
Yes, thank you. So you already negotiated these with the
Yes.
with the bus companies, and has 3% been typical for us?
This has been less than we've had the last few years.
Thank you.
Okay. Karen, anything? Yeah, no.
All right.
I agree that 3% seems like an admirable agreement. No.
I mean, I always try to get CPI, but,
I was gonna say that, Chris.
I was trying for 2.3, but I was
There you go.
satisfied
I
with
wrote it down.
3.0.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
Well, and you're looking at metrics and making sure,
Oh,
like
yes.
minimizing issues
Yes,
and all that
other
sort of stuff,
districts are
so-
getting much bigger increases. We got them down.
Right, right, right. And just, managing less incidences that are happening. Remember when we had issues and
Oh,
we
no,
haven't in a
this
while, and I
Service has
appreciate that. I
been
think
much
everybody
better,
does. Yeah.
much better than
I know
when
what, I
we
shouldn't say it, right?
had the previous vendor.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
trouble.
Cottage Hill has always done a great job, and since
They have.
moving to First Student,
Yes,
we have heard a lot less about the bus company.
totally agree. Item C, facility use fees. So we increased these by CPI. The only problem here is we haven't opened up our rental reservations, and it's kind of indefinite of when we would do any indoor reservations. We are doing the outdoor reservations, but we're not doing the indoor reservations. So in the past, we used to have that meeting in July with the organizations to make reservations, because York Fieldhouse is in big demand for basketball and so forth. And but we're, I'm not sure when we'll open up, but this is an item. I mean, the fees are going to be increased by CPI 2.3%. Is there any questions about that?
We discussed years ago that it's better to just keep up with inflation than every decade or so having a giant increase and not have it be in all these organizations that use our facilities and rent them from us. Not having that money in their budget and surprising them with a big fee increase. So
Yeah,
I
the
think
concept
keeping
is
up
a
with
break-even
inflation-
operation for the district. We're not trying to make any money on these facility rentals, but just to break even.
Yeah.
So that's why we just do the inflationary increase. The next item is student fees. K through 8 will be the first item. And just as a reminder, the student fees were allowed by the Illinois School Code to charge student fees, and our fees are for things, for resources that are required for the courses, and they are consumed by students. So we take the actual cost and we allocate them by useful life. So textbooks are divided by 6, so a 6-year useful life. So we take the costs and so we just try to pass through the consumable costs. The increases that we saw this year were a few new items. Freckle is a item that was impacting K-5. It's $15 for Freckle. So this was a program that they started this year and was something that seemed valuable, so they added Freckle, and that is the biggest increases at K through 5. And then in Mayan increased from 17 to 18. So Freckle and Mayan had resulted in the increases in K-5, and then 6 through 8 there was a math workbooks that have decreased, but digital math tools were added for $4, and personal whiteboards were added for $2 in math. We kept all the athletic fees the same. Our athletic fees are based on cost. expenditures or percent of expenditures, and it's really not a good year to measure athletics from last year, so we just decided to keep them all the same. So we kept all athletic fees the same. And then at York, we did not have much in the way of changes, just small changes where the art class fee we lowered by $1. We increased the cap and gown fee 50 cents, $28.50. That's the actual cost of the cap and gown. And then we raised the lab fee in foods. That's just due to the consumables in the foods class, the cost of the consumables. So that increased from 25 to 30. And then the transcripts fee we reduced from $4.25 to $4. And we kept all the athletic fees the same. So I just wanted to make sure if there were any questions about student fees, these are for approval at the April 27th board meeting as well.
Anything for Chris on fees? Okay. Looks good, Chris.
Okay, then so we've gotten through A through D, and I'm gonna go to G. That's a good idea, Gordon. Yes, I should have thought of that. All right, so item G, benefit administration system software. This is something we've been talking about for years. In the benefits department, but we had a long-term employee in the benefits department that had a way of keeping in track of the 1,000 employees on index cards. So we kept that going and she retired. She was great employee that I miss dearly, and
Chris,
I think she
did
knew.
she take the index cards with her?
She knew every employee by first name. She's very good, but we want to move to a more a technology, a software for benefits that will be intuitive for employees and easy to use, and it's gonna really increase our capabilities in the benefits department and make it much easier in the onboarding process, where we've really improved the onboarding process in the HR department in all areas. The lone area that was not automated was the benefits department. So we're gonna finally, we're hoping to do that now. And one of the things that we thought it could save in the cost of the program is that you put the decision in front of the employees every year to try to select their insurance program, as opposed to it just always staying the same. If you do nothing, it always stays the same. That they would actually have to select their insurance program every year, could result in them choosing more economical for both the employee and the employer as far as the insurance premiums are concerned. But we had a very thorough process to select the benefit administration system, and we went through interviews with companies. We called references, and our new benefits coordinator was very involved, along with our benefits broker, and we had the technology department involved as well, and Adrian and Helen were involved with the interviews as well. So we had a big team working on this, And this is the recommendation for the April 27th board meeting.
So Chris, when you said onboarding, it's so when new employees come aboard, the system will kick in with the new employee to give them ahead of time, you know, as employment hiring process, you know, here's our benefits, you know, here's selection, here's kind of, like we can gear them toward what is best, right?
Yes,
Okay.
it will be very automated, yes.
Okay, and that's your, that was your point with the onboarding and the automated.
It'll be automated and intuitive so that we don't have to walk them through every different benefit option and so forth. It's more software generated, yes.
And it'll make sure that, you know, they're getting through and selecting all the things that they need to select.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. And thanks for my question earlier about, you know, efficiencies and all. So up front, it makes sense that, you know, there's a lot of work to bring in a new system and all that sort of stuff, but, you know, at some point there will be some efficiencies from HR potential is what you responded back. So, I mean, I thought that was helpful and useful.
Yes, I mean, a lot of times I think the benefits department, she's answering questions all the time, putting out fires, treading water, and I think this is gonna, you know, be much better for the way her workflow works in the benefits department.
It does sound a little less personal than index cards, but I think we need to move into the 21st century.
Yes. So then we get to item H, the York Photography Company or selection RFP process. And so we went with the lowest responsible bidder is Stuart Rogers. They used to be our photographer for many years, but they would be coming back. I don't know if you, through the scope review, we did eliminate one bidder, and I had that for you in your administration part of the board docs for you to read about that. But this was the recommendation from York, Stuart Rogers, and it's the lowest responsible bidder.
And this cost is passed through to parents,
This
right?
is a
So it's
pass-through to
not
the
paid by-
parents.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Anything on photography?
I just think it's beneficial that we're listening to our community. I know that, you know, and so it's, thank you for doing that in, you know, without us kind of really knowing the details. But on behalf of the community, I think that it's good to have a user-friendly company. And I know we've used Stuart Rogers, in the past. So thank you.
All right, great.
Yeah, we
Chris, you're
think
on a
they
roll.
provide a better service, so should be an improvement. So the last item on the agenda, letter I, the March monthly financial report. I don't want to go into great detail. I know that I've provided a narrative explanation. The year is going pretty well. I think we are doing better than expectations as far as the budget is concerned. You know, the abatement was not part of the budget. The budget was a deficit of $5 million for the year, but we're currently projecting better than that. But we did not have in the budget the abatement, so that is a deviation from the budget. But on the revenue side, the property taxes are online with projected. Replacement taxes are doing better than the budget, as had budgeted, knowing that replacement taxes are based on the economy. We had budgeted a significant decrease, and it hasn't been nearly as bad. Interest income, we were way off the other way. Interest rates have just been so small that our interest revenue is less than budget, and that we will do a better job of budgeting next year on interest income. The operation and maintenance, other local, those are for ComEd rebates, and it was we haven't been renting facilities, but there were some rentals that we collected this budget year that were rented last year, so we didn't have a budget for that, and so that's better than expected. Evidence-based funding, as you know, is flat, and it's right. They always are right on time with that. The categorical has done better than I expected for sure, and so categorical state funding has been good. On the expenditure side, we're doing better in salaries, and that's the biggest reason why we're doing better than budget is salaries. We had budgeted a 6.3% decrease, and that decrease, or 6.3% increase, and the increase was related to adding more than 8 certified staff this year. But because we've had a big reduction in food service salaries and lunchroom supervisions, obviously we're going to have more of that than we were having in the first 9 months of the fiscal year, but in the last 3 months. But we've done much better than expected in food service salaries, lunchroom supervision, stipends. Although stipends, we're going to have more stipends as more sports are. We have a lot more sports going on right now. Just the timing of stipends related to sports is different this year than any year in the past. So that is probably going to catch up at the end here as far as stipends goes. Benefits is going very well. So any questions on the financials?
Anybody?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. At some point, Chris, there's 2 pieces for me that I'd like us to talk about. So we're typically tier 4 in evidence-based funding. Sorry, that's the topic. Once we were tier 3.
Yes.
Both of those, we get very little from the state. What would get us to tier 2? Would we ever? I just think it's out there. The second thing is can we at some point communicate at a board meeting so both internal and external people understand what small portion of the funding, federal funding, that we would get, because it's all going to flow through EBF, and people don't understand that we will get very little again. So I just think that it's important for us, because people see those huge numbers and it says school districts, and then I get questioned about what are we going to do with that money. I'm like, we will not get much. So I think it's important for us to, in this conversation, for us to educate people. Yes, sorry, yep. ESSER, any of the, for COVID. Because that's a big ticket item that's being talked about at a federal level, and so people are assuming we're getting big dollars, and we're not.
Well, we are getting, so let me, I don't have the,
Do it now.
I don't have the, oh, I have the numbers.
Just a placeholder at some point.
I got to tell you what the numbers are. I have them. So ESSER, so there's ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. ESSER 1 was 283,000. I know that one off the top of my head, but I have to look up the other two. ESSER two is about $1 million that we're going to get. Here I have it. So 283,653, that's ESSER one. And we use that mostly for the Apple, the iPads, kindergarten iPads, along with teacher iPads. And then there was just a little bit of PPE in there, like 27,000. It was mostly iPads, ESSER one. ESSER two is 956,252. The plan was going to be to use that for the safeguard saliva screening, along with PPE like tents and tables and chairs and masks and clean disinfectant and all that type of stuff. But we really haven't laid out a solid plan, and I am concerned about whether we will get reimbursement for safeguard or not. And so I need to submit that application to see if they reject it, like the newspaper said. I know you asked about this, Beth, that's why I keep looking at you. Because if it does get rejected, then that changes the plan of what to do with ESSER two. ESSER three, and I think Rob was talking mostly about ESSER three, is 2,146,567. So the total of ESSER one, ESSER two, and ESSER three is 3,386,472. It's not bad, right? A lot of other districts are getting a lot more than that, though. I mean, so that is why you're hearing it from your other LEND members and that, because a lot of districts are getting much bigger sums than this. But this is based on Title I allocations and demographics in the district that they decide how much money we're getting in the federal stimulus money. But those are our amounts, and we have to put a plan together. I mean, that safeguard thing is a big question mark. And then we planned on doing, like Rob was talking about, the HVAC at the Abbey, the transition center, whatever the new name will be of the transition center. We definitely planned on using ESSER three towards the mechanical systems at the new transition center. Whether, Rob was talking about using ESSER three at Jefferson or Jackson is definitely a consideration, but we need to plan out the use of this 3,386,472. And like I said, ESSER one is already spent, and that was the iPads. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Anything else on the budget? Nothing? Chris, what else you got?
So we're planning on the next meeting, because, it had came up about fund balance policy. Obviously, our fund balance policy is outdated because we changed our accounting to defer June taxes. So the 26% fund balance to expenditure ratio doesn't make sense. So this agenda seemed pretty full with technology and facilities update that I didn't think we could have a real deep, thoughtful conversation about fund balance policy or about financial KPIs, because at the ECRA board retreat, they talked about us looking at financial KPIs in a finance committee. We didn't do that. And then the other thing Karen brought up as well was that we did an abatement in this past tax levy from working cash to debt service, which allowed us then to keep the debt service, that reduced our debt service levy to overall. So, and I'm anxious to see the tax bills to hope that they came out flat as we had planned. for taxpayers will be coming out in a few weeks here. In May 1st, we'll be seeing those tax bills. So as you know, the debt service, there's a little bit of a hump here in these 3 or 4 years, where the tax on the debt service will increase until we get beyond that little hump for 3 or 4 years, and then it flattens out for all the way out. So, what we do with that little hump, if we're going to continue to have an abatement strategy or not, is a question that will need to be addressed as well. And then, so that's, May 13th is the next meeting, or that's our plan, if the committee members can make it. I know I did get something back from Chris Kaczynski that he could make that date. Karen, does that work for you? All right, so.
Works for me.
All right, so May 13th.
She'll be very happy to have me out of the house.
I like the 5:30 time because I can get home at 8:30, or is it 8:23? All right. I have nothing further, Jim.
If there's nothing left on the agenda, any further questions, then we're adjourned. Thank you.
Can I ask you and Kara a question together, maybe here? So I'm, yeah, it was, well, I heard there wasn't a meeting since October. That's unbelievable. Okay. Okay, okay. So I am assuming that most of these things, Gary, and we're gonna talk again tomorrow too, that those things that we zip through here can go on the consent agenda.